When I was your president, we had peace through strength, and now we have weakness, conflict, and chaos. The atrocities we're witnessing in Israel would never have happened if I was president, would never have ever happened. When I was commander-in-chief, we reduced the Iranian economy, and I withdrew from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, imposed the toughest ever sanctions on the regime, and imposed a strict travel ban to keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country. Now they're pouring into our country. They're pouring into our country. Joe Biden undid it. He undid it all and gave billions and billions of dollars to the world's top sponsor of terror, tossing Israel to the bloodthirsty terrorists and jihadists.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about my least favorite subject ever to talk about, which is this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. And the reason why we got to talk about it again is because Mike Pence came out here and gave the worst take that I've ever heard in my life when it comes to this situation, in which Mike Pence, for whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly who told him to go on national television and to say this, something that is so stupid and so dumb that, quite honestly, this should be the end of his career. His career was already over, but this really should be the nail in the coffin for his career, in which he blames Trump for the Hamas attack on Israel that basically led up to the escalation of this conflict. Take a look.
I want to focus on what you had to say about some of your fellow Republicans. You said that this is what happens when leaders in the Republican Party signal Americans retreat as leader of the free world. Weakness arouses evil. Are you talking about your former running mate?
Well, I am, but let me begin at where we ought to start. I mean, that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan has emboldened the enemies of freedom around the world. And now war is raging in Eastern Europe. And President Joe Biden's kowtowing for the last 2.5 years to the mullahs in Iran, lifting sanctions, begging them to get back in the Iran nuclear deal, and then paying $6 billion in a ransom for hostages, I think set the conditions for this unprecedented terrorist attack by Hamas against Israel. But I also believe this is what happens when we have leading voices like Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Ron DeSantis signaling retreat from America's role as leader of the free world. That what happened in Ukraine was an unprovoked invasion by Russia. What happened this weekend was an unprovoked invasion by Hamas into Israel. And I really believe now more than ever, both the debate within the Republican Party and the debate within America is whether or not we're going to once again stand without apology as the leader of the free world, as the arsenal of democracy. The heartbreaking images coming out of both of these theaters of operations remind us that America is the indispensable leader of the free world. And if I'm president of the United States, we'll lead from American strength.
Yeah, so it's amazing to me how the neocon GOP politicians seem to be in a competition in regards to who can have the silliest, most asinine takes on this situation going on here in Israel. And Mike Pence here really takes the cake for the silliest take that I've heard from a GOP neocon politician on this situation by blaming Trump, okay? And him blaming Trump, in my opinion, is Trump derangement syndrome taken to a whole nother level, considering how, one, this guy was the vice president in Trump's administration, which is, again, it's incredibly hard to believe, right, in 2023, that this guy was actually the second person in charge. But also because Trump's foreign policy, objectively speaking, prevented situations like this. For example, when it came to giving money to the Palestinians and the money allegedly ending up in the hands of Hamas, Trump blocked that. Biden undid that. Trump also blocked funding to Iran, okay, in which, Biden undid that as well, too, in which allegedly, according to the GOP, Iran may be using some of those funds in order to fund, this terrorism and stuff like that. Again, I think that objectively speaking, under Trump's foreign policy, we had more peace for a reason. And one of the reasons why is because Trump actually really did believe in peace through strength. He bucked the neocon establishment. He was tough when he needed to be tough. And he was diplomatic when he needed to be diplomatic. For example, I always use this example because I love what Trump did in regards to dealing with Iran and General Soleimani and showing that, hey, we're tough. Okay, if you mess with us, then, there's going to be hell to pay. But also at the same time, when it comes to North Korea, his ability to be diplomatic instead of being antagonistic against Kim Jong-un all the time, Trump actually was like, you know what, let's play ball with North Korea. Let's actually try to use some diplomacy here. And what you saw under Trump is that we didn't have as many issues with North Korea as we usually had with North Korea under previous administrations like the Obama administration and the Bush administration. We can't forget about the Abraham Accords that have normalized relations between Israel and some of these Arab states that historically have been antagonistic towards Israel. Okay. Objectively speaking, Trump has brought Israel closer to peace than most presidents, okay, that we've had. Okay. In which, now, Saudi Arabia was on a path to normalizing relations with Israel. However, it seems like under the Biden administration, that may fall apart. Okay. Just saying. Trump's foreign policy, in my opinion, is probably one of the best things about his presidency. And that is why we need this man back in office more than ever before. Okay. So for Mike Pence to come out here and to say something like that, to blame Trump's foreign policy for why we're in this situation, again, is just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowingly stupid, and it should be the end of his career, right? But with that being said, I actually want to take this a step further. And the reason why I want to take this a step further, guys, is because on my channel, I'm not afraid to go into territory that some conservatives are afraid to go into, because we really need to go here. Because if neocons are going to come out here and blame MAGA, they're going to blame Trump, they're going to blame non-interventionist foreign policy, which is what the MAGA base believes in. Okay, they're tired of the endless wars. If they're going to blame us for situations like this happening, let's actually tell the truth. And the truth is that the reality is that a lot of these situations happen in regards to radicalizing terrorists and arming them because of interventionist, neocon / neoliberal foreign policy.
What's happening in the Middle East, and in particular with Gaza right now, we have some moral responsibility for both sides in a way, because we provide help and funding for both Arab nations and Israel. And so we definitely have a moral responsibility, and especially now today, the weapons being used to kill so many Palestinians are American weapons, and American funds essentially are being used for this. But there's a political liability which I think is something that we fail to look at, because too often there's so much blowback from our intervention in areas that we shouldn't be involved in. Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel, because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you say, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage the Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas. So we first indirectly and directly through Israel help establish Hamas. Then we have election. Then Hamas becomes dominant, so we have to kill them. It just doesn't make sense. During the 80s, we were allied with Osama bin Laden. And we were contending with the Soviets. It was at that time our CIA thought it was good if we radicalized the Muslim world. So we financed the madrasa schools to radicalize the Muslims in order to compete with the Soviets. There's too much blowback. There's a lot of reasons why we should oppose this resolution. It is not in the interest of the United States. It's not in the interest.
Yeah, so what you saw there is Ron Paul, who some people say is the OG. Okay, that was in 2009. Okay, when this conflict had escalated, him laying out why neocon / neoliberal foreign policy, the same foreign policy that people like Mike Pence and Nikki Haley worship at the altar at, has actually been a thorn in the side for the United States. And I'll go even further, because it is an objective fact that the neocon foreign policy that people like Mike Pence continuously push in this country has been an absolute failure. Okay, like, for example, Ron Paul talked about what happened in Afghanistan. Let me actually give you more details. Under the Reagan administration, we armed and funded the Mujahideen under the code name Operation Cyclone. Now, the Mujahideen were Islamic rebels who we funded them because we wanted to push back against the expansion of the Soviet Union and their influence around the world. One particular place where we were fighting back hard is Afghanistan. Okay, we wanted to fight a proxy war in Afghanistan in order to relinquish Soviet control and influence in the country. So again, what did we do to do that? We armed radical Islamic extremists, trained them, and then out of the Mujahideen, you had the Taliban. Now, eventually in the 1990s, the Taliban took over Afghanistan during the Afghan Civil War in the early 1990s after the Soviets had been driven out. In the late 80s, again, after the U.S. funded the Mujahideen, which again is a precursor to the Taliban, okay, they were Islamic fighters, jihadi fighters that we funded to drive Russia out of Afghanistan. Again, that led to the Afghan Civil War, in which the Taliban emerged out of that civil war, again, as a successor to the Mujahideen. Okay, the Taliban now takes over Afghanistan in the mid-1990s. The Taliban, because they're radical Islamic extremists, turned around and then became antagonistic towards the United States. Okay, and they allowed terrorists to plot and plan terrorist attacks in their country, which allegedly led to 9/11. Now we have to go back into Afghanistan because we armed these people, we trained these people in the first place, or, you know, the precursors to the Taliban, to be more specific. And guess what? 20 years later, trillions of dollars later, thousands of American lives later, thousands of innocent civilian lives later, the Taliban now has control over that country again. Again, this is all under neocon, neoliberal foreign policy. I'll go even further. Why do we have such an antagonistic relationship with Iran? Why are we not friends with them? We used to be very cool with Iran back in the day, okay? Specifically, in the 1950s, led by the CIA, we led a coup in Iran where we overthrew a democratically elected leader, right? Remember, because we love democracy, okay? The United States loves democracy, okay? This is why we overthrow them, right? We overthrew a democratically elected leader in Iran and replaced him with an authoritarian leader. And that later led to the Islamic Revolution of the 1970s, in which that leader was driven out of the country, and you have an Islamic Republic that took its place. And ever since then, Iran and the United States have been enemies. And again, our foreign policy basically led to the situation that we're in right now with that country. And I can go on and on and on with this, okay? Because we've done this so many times, okay? We've armed rebels in Syria and other parts of the Middle East. Again, we don't have a good track record of U.S. foreign policy intervention in the Middle East. We don't. We suck at it. We're terrible at it, right? But again, this is the type of stuff that Mike Pence pushes as if it's gospel. And then they criticize everybody else who are like, you know, let's question this. We don't have a good history of doing this. People like Trump saying, you know, the invasion of Iraq was a disaster, right? What happened in Iraq was a disaster. And then Trump had to come in and clean it up, right? He's the only guy that was able to actually clean up the Middle East. Y'all remember ISIS in Iraq? How Obama essentially botched the rebuilding of Iraq after Bush went in? You remember that? You remember that? After we overthrew Saddam Hussein, and you had, again, these terrorists that arose to power because, again, we had a power vacuum that was created by U.S. interventionism, overthrowing a dictator that we used to be cool with, by the way, right? When he played ball with us. But since he didn't want to play ball with us anymore, we had to topple him, right? That's just kind of how it goes. But anyways, okay, yeah, we created a power vacuum. Radical Islamists rose out of that power vacuum. And under the Obama administration, again, that was a huge thing. It was terrible. Trump comes along, calls it out for what it is, calls out the neocon establishment that supported this, and then he goes in and he cleans up ISIS. Okay? We don't hear too much about ISIS nowadays. Well, why is that? It's because of the Trump administration. But again, you got people like Mike Pence that can come out here with a straight face and lie to you and try to blame Trump, blame Vivek Ramaswamy, blame Ron DeSantis for policies that we know have failed from neocons, okay? I'm so serious. These people, they kill me with this. They sit on their high horse and they've never seen a war that they didn't want to fight, even though they don't want to send their sons and daughters to go fight the wars. They don't want to go fight the wars themselves. They want to fight every war. They want to get involved in every conflict, and they screw it up every single time. And we never learn our lesson from it. Well, why is that? Because screwing up these conflicts is good for the United States. The military-industrial complex, that is. Don't believe me? Look at defense stocks, okay? Look at the top gainers in the S&P 500 today. Northrop Grumman up 9.87%. General Dynamics 7.25%. Lockheed Martin 6.38%. The defense contractors are winning, okay? Look at oil. Look at oil futures, okay? Up 4.16%. Why? Because war is on the horizon. Again, these people benefit from war. And guess what? They turn around, okay, and they give donations to politicians, to neocons like Mike Pence, and then they go on TV and they call for more war. This is how the game works, guys. This is how the game works. The neoliberal, neocon establishment, they benefit from more war. They benefit from U.S. interventionism in every single conflict. Why? Because the defense contractors get paid, and the defense contractors turn around and make donations and give kickbacks to the politicians for doing that. Again, there's a lot of people that get rich from war, guys. So again, when you have somebody like Trump that comes around and bucks the neocon establishment, bucks the defense contractors, bucks the military-industrial complex, this is why they're going after him so hard. That's the real honest-to-God truth. They don't want Trump back in office because Trump maintained peace, or he tried his best to keep peace. And peace is not in the interest of these politicians. It's not in the interest of the powers that be. And that's why you see people like Mike Pence coming out here saying stupid shit like he's saying, and Nikki Haley as well too, because these people have never seen a war they didn't want to fight. And that's why they go out of their way to make sure that they cause more war. These people know funding and arming extremists is not a good idea, but they do it anyways. Because, hey, as long as war is happening in the Middle East and people are dying, these people are getting paid. They're getting campaign donations and they're maintaining power and control. It's a sad reality, but that is the reality. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.